Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Millie, and today it's time to do another garden tour. This is the end of my garden season in 2025. It's, the third week in October, and just about everything is put to bed except for my winter garden, and that's what we're going to show you. We're also going to show you the remnants of my small area garden, show you what that looks like, and then talk about what the plans are for the winter. So this is my small area garden. This deck is probably 10 feet wide, 20 feet long, possibly. I haven't really measured it, but that's what I'm assuming. And I wanted to see what I could grow on here and still have a place to sit. Now, I've taken apart my green stalks. We had a lot of flowers. We had tomatoes and peppers, beans, all sorts of things growing in there. And I'll show you a picture of what they looked like just a few weeks ago before I took them apart. And they were absolutely gorgeous and highly productive. The tomatoes have hit temperatures around 33 degrees and they are done. So these are going to be torn out probably tomorrow, maybe in a couple of days. But we do have probably tomato hornworm on here somewhere that I haven't found because we've got some damage there. We've got a couple of tomatoes. Let me see if they feel, yeah, they feel fine. But we'll probably pick these off and ripen those inside once we're done. We have a kohlrabi growing in a pot. This one will stay in the pot for a while until it gets a little more size, and then I'll take that out. We've got some peppers ready to harvest. These are Antohi peppers, and they've been highly productive. With all my peppers, I have a year's supply in the freezer. We have a year's supply of pickled peppers, and we're going to be finishing off our hot sauce. We also have dehydrated peppers, and these are the ones that I used for the dehydrated peppers, and they were really, really good. So I've used those in place of paprika because I wasn't able to get any. This tomato right here is a dwarf tomato that I started growing last September and grew it all through the winter and brought it outside, and it's been heavily productive, but it's done. This one's a golden harvest, and this is as big as it gets because it's a micro dwarf tomato. This is another micro dwarf tomato. We've got some ripe ones that we'll be picking. This one's an ink spot. Now, I would take this indoors, but I have made it my pledge not to ever bring anything from outdoors back into indoors except for my citrus, because one year I ended up with just about every kind of bug you could think of, from scale to whitefly, thrips, everything. We had everything, aphids, and I had to tear everything out and start over. So this, I did take cuttings and used some spray on those to see if I could kill any insects that were on them, and I am trying to root those cuttings indoors. And we'll see how it goes. If it doesn't work, I'll start more by seed. My blueberry, this is a Perpetua blueberry, is forming fruit again, and this is the end of October. I don't know if, well, it's obviously not going to have time to ripen before it freezes, but it's fun to see it bloom and set fruit again. And this is my jelly bean blueberry. It had set a second crop, but I harvested all of those. I don't think there's any more left. They were down near the bottom, but it's looking beautiful. But my blueberries are going to be overwintered outside. I'm going to put more mulch on them and move them up against the house. Maybe I'll even take them over on the south side so that they can overwinter better. But they are hardy enough to overwinter. We'll just see how they do. So my vote for small area gardening is an A+. I absolutely love gardening on my deck. There's a lot you can grow in pots, and you can really feed yourself in a small area. And I wanted to give you an update on my elevated Vigo raised bed, and it turned out beautifully. We produced a ton of summer squash in there. We had summer squash and basil and flowers, and they all turned out beautifully. Those were done. So for the winter, we're going to have ornamental cabbage and pansies, and that should overwinter beautifully. And then the pansies should be flowering in the spring also. We have not taken apart this green stalk. It's definitely worse for wear. We've got a few flowers left, but this one needs to be taken apart this week because freeze is coming and it is just no longer beautiful. Then I wanted to show you what I found. Look at the table and chairs I found. This area here has suffered without a table for quite a few years because I couldn't find the exact perfect piece for it, and I found it. It matches my Veggie raised bed. They fold up and can store easily over the winter, and they are the right color and the right size. This is exactly what I was looking for, and I love it. And I actually got this at the garden center that I work at. Now we're on the south side where I had my tomatoes. I harvested all of those, and even though we started out with a slow tomato year because of the weather, it ended up really good. I have a full year supply of all the tomatoes I will be using for an entire year, including salsa, and all my dehydrated tomatoes, everything. We have that full year supply. And then I switched these over to my winter garden. So let's show you what I have in there and talk a little bit about winter gardening here in Utah. So I live in Utah, which is a zone 7, but sometimes we'll have zone 6 winters. And if I'm careful what I plant, and I use low hoop houses with just greenhouse plastic over the top, and then I'll also use frost cloth inside the little hoop houses, I can overwinter several different kinds of vegetables, and I've narrowed it down to the ones that I have here. These are the hardiest. These were planted in the beginning of October, so that was about 3 weeks ago, and it was about a week and a half to 2 weeks later than I like to plant them, but they're still going to do fine. In this one we have cabbages. Cabbages will, especially this time of year, sit around and slowly grow, mostly because of the temperatures and the lack of sunlight. But they'll slowly grow, and I usually have cabbages to harvest here near the end of February and sometimes the beginning of March. So cabbages are perfect. They can take a ton of cold and do beautifully. Spinach is another one that does absolutely beautifully. Now I had a little one down here and it disappeared. It looks like it may have actually even gotten eaten. It either died or got eaten. But anyway, we had a spinach there. So now it looks like we only have one left, but that should be fine for the winter. Another excellent one to overwinter is kohlrabi. So this bed is all kohlrabi, except for we have one chard right there and kale. So chard and kale do beautifully. The only issue with them is you basically end up harvesting what is grown before it freezes. Once it freezes, they stop growing. So as you harvest, you don't get any new growth. And then as soon as it starts to get a little bit warm in the spring, they bolt and go to seed. So these were extras that I had indoors, and I'm going to do another video probably next week about my indoor gardening and show you how I grow kale and chard inside. But these were extras, so I decided to just put them outside and see how they do. So this area behind me is an area that is mostly finished. I've pretty much cleaned out most of the beds, and we're just going to let it sit for the rest of the winter. So let me show you videos of the past of what I had in there, and then talk about how I put my beds to sleep and why I'm not going to plant here over the winter. So I live at the bottom of a mountain. This is actually part of the Rocky Mountains. And anywhere where you have some place at the bottom of a hill gets the most cold. You know, the cold flows downhill like water and it settles in low areas. So this area is colder than the south side of my house, and it's colder than the slope that's up there. We're going to show you the garden beds that are up there in a minute. This is facing south. Right now I'm looking towards the north. So I've tried overwintering vegetables in these garden beds, and they don't do as well, and it is because of the cold. I do have a hoop house over here. I may move that up to the top of the hill, or it may just end up being unused. But in this bed we had some peppers. We have some center cut squash that I am going to be harvesting here shortly. We're going to get a freeze here, so I'm going to need to take those indoors, even though they're not fully ripe yet. They'll ripen indoors. And I had some tomatillos, and we made a ton of salsa verde off the tomatillos. We have a few more winter squash that need to be harvested. These are butternut squash. I will harvest these the same time that I do the center cut squash. This bed was tomatoes. It's already emptied out. This was my melon bed, and it was emptied out. And these holes are where I had my Thirsty Earth Oya system. And that system worked out really well. As soon as I'm done harvesting the spaghetti squash here, we're going to show you how I dismantle my Oya system and talk a little bit about that. So that's going to be another video. Oyas are terracotta pots. Let me pull this one out of the ground so you can see. So they are terracotta pots, and if we get a freeze with them in the ground like that, especially if it's a hard freeze, there's a possibility they could crack. So I only have 2 beds of the 6 that had them left to pull the Oyas out. There's Oyas in that bed also. And I'm trying to see if I could get these beans. We have some that are already ready to harvest. We did one big harvest, but we've got quite a few that are not ready. So I'm hoping that they all finish drying out as soon as possible before the freeze next week. But that's next week, so I don't know if we're going to get that to happen. But we're going to leave them as long as possible so we can get as many dried beans as possible. Now I did use these as green beans also. These are the northeastern beans, and they're meant to be green beans. And they were the most delicious. There's one right here that's really little. But they were the most delicious, tender green beans ever. I absolutely love them. Now my hands are a little dirty. Let me wipe this off. Let me see if it still is good. Still tender and delicious at the end of October. But the big ones are going to be used as a white bean. The beans are white, and it's usually a pretty good harvest off of this. So it's a dual purpose bean. Now, not all of my beds are going to be completely harvested out. This one does not have Oyas in it. I'll probably have to hand water, but these are leeks that I planted early this spring. And I was just going to let them go through a few freezes and then just harvest them little by little and see how well they do out in the open, over the winter. Actually, we've got one flowering. Maybe, well, no, I won't leave it. I'll pull the flower off. So we got the flower off that one. But this is the first year I've grown leeks, and we're just going to harvest them little by little and see what happens. You know, the ones that are earlier will be harvested before it freezes solid, and then we'll leave a few and see how cold they can tolerate. It's just an experiment. These right here grew so tall this year. This is the Jerusalem artichokes, and I have them in just this little round bed, trying to keep them contained. They have escaped out the bottom in the past, and I have been poisoning them. I did dig out this bed and put weed cloth down at the bottom, and I'm hoping that that helps contain them. So I did that this spring. The escapees were before that happened, but it looks like we're going to need to add more soil here too. It seems to be using all the soil. Now the storms that we've had come through the past few weeks have knocked these over. So as soon as they start turning brown, we will cut them back, harvest a few. I'm going to try and ferment a few just to see what they're like. And then we'll leave the rest in the bed over the winter and maybe harvest more next spring. But usually you need to completely empty out the bed and then plant what you want left in here, because they will probably break the bed with all of the growth that they do. This was just 10 Jerusalem artichokes, and this is what grew. Now this area of my garden is on a steep slope, so I terraced my garden beds so that they are ground level on one side and fully exposed on the other, and they have worked beautifully. I put these beds in 2009 and have not had to replace them since. I have had to, and it looks like I'm going to have to do it on this bed too. Every once in a while I need to go in and reset the blocks, because they do start tipping. This is on a hill and we do get a little bit of erosion. But I have my fall crops in here. These were planted at the end of July, and this is what they look like in October. We've got a few cabbages ready to harvest. I'm not in a hurry because these will hold out over the winter. I will put plastic over this and harvest them one by one as I need them, because like I said, they'll hold beautifully. So we have cabbage. We have some red cabbage that's starting to head up. this gorgeous big guy. Let me show you the size of the leaf. Let me see if I can do this. That is a collard. These collards will stay here over the winter. So we're going to probably make and freeze a ton of collard greens out of this one, harvest this one, and we have a couple of more in here just so that I can have room to put plastic over this bed. We've also got some kohlrabi ready to harvest. This is Super Smelts kohlrabi. Absolutely delicious. Even if it gets huge like that, it does not get woody. It just stays sweet and delicious. Over here we have another, I think this was a cabbage, but it didn't do as well. I'll probably pull that out before I put the plastic over the bed. We've got the kale and the chard that I planted over the summer. These will definitely bolt the second we get any heat whatsoever now, and they may get pulled. I'm pretty sure they probably have a few aphids on them, but we'll harvest as much as possible, clean them up really good, and then put them in the freezer. We've still got peppers. I'm waiting until a couple of days from now to harvest the last of my peppers, because we won't have a freeze then. It'll just give them, because we won't have a freeze until then. They're not going to color up at all, but we'll just let them get as big as possible and then harvest the last of them. But the peppers have done beautifully. We're going to leave this bed fallow over the winter. We've got more kohlrabi, different sizes. We'll put plastic over this and harvest them as we want them. We've got our rosemary. This rosemary right here is only 1/8 of the size it used to be. It used to span this entire area, and it was planted in 2009. So what is that? A 16, 17-year-old rosemary. And because it's so old, I think that's why we've had some pretty heavy dieback on it. This one right here, we're going to try and get this one to grow. This one is a newer one that I planted this spring. So we'll see if we can get it to overwinter. These two beds are where I'm going to plant my shallots and my garlic. I think I will put the garlic in this bed and the shallots in that bed. The reason I'm going to put the shallots in that bed is that last year I planted a full bed of shallots and I had to give half away because I had so many, way more than I could use. So I think I will probably in the spring put carrots in the other half of the bed. And by spring I mean probably early March I'll put the seeds down. We've got a few more green peppers that I'm going to harvest in a couple of days. Got some banana peppers that are left over, not very many. And this will be done. And now it's time to harvest my Chinese mountain yams. I will link a video up above that shows you what a Chinese mountain yam looks like. But this is what the vines look like. These have been in this bed for about 5 years. I cannot get rid of them, but they only take a small portion of the bed because I let them go over the edge. Let me show you what's underneath here. You can see all the little mountain yam tubules. You can see all the little tubers right here. These are aerial tubers. And then when I lift this up, shake it, you can see all the ones on the ground. And these are totally edible, a lot like potatoes. So I harvest all those so they don't all go to seed, and I eat them, and they're good. This is what stevia flowers look like. So these, once they flower, it's too late to harvest them. They get bitter. So these will go into the compost along with my marigold and this one right here. And I'll put another video up to show you what these are, but these are golden berries. I don't think I have any that are going to get ripe here. But we did have fruit off of it. So I have harvested some, but I think the rest of these are not going to be getting ripe because they're very, very frost sensitive. The second we have a hint of a frost, they're going to be dead. all, let's show you our compost. I do videos on compost every year. I probably won't do one this year, but this compost, I'll show you a picture of what it looked like last fall, is fully composted down, ready to harvest. And the reason I'm able to get full compost in 1 year is because of the sprinkler head. These two compost down fully, and this one doesn't. This one does not get water. This is my storage area. So this is a storage area of all the garden waste that I pulled out so far. Let me show you what this looks like. So if you just take the top layer off, this is what I have. And you saw the picture of what it looked like last year. There's a little bit of wood in there, but this is beautiful, fully composted compost. So we'll be harvesting all that. And then if I have the energy, we're going to be rebuilding our bins. These bins have lasted since 2009. I have not replaced them since 2009, and they are definitely worse for wear. So we'll see if I get the energy. After moving all the compost over here, we'll move the straw into the garden beds, compost over here, and then redo the compost beds. Now it's usually bittersweet to pull out the garden beds at the end of the year because I love my gardens. I love coming out and harvesting things, seeing what's growing, looking at the flowers, but I get tired, just like the rest of us. I'm sure all of you get tired. But it also doesn't mean it's the end of the growing season. I showed you the winter garden beds that I'm going to have going. They take very minimal work. I will take a bucket or my hose on the warm days up there and water them maybe once a month, and that's it, other than harvesting. Now I am going to start a series on my indoor gardening. I do garden indoors, and when I say garden indoors, I grow tomatoes and peppers, I grow cucumbers, I grow lettuce and radishes and a bunch of different types of herbs. There's a lot of things you can grow indoors, and I'm going to do a series on that. We're going to show you the different ways that I garden. I garden in pots, which in soil, and I also garden hydroponically. So if you would love to continue on with the gardening, if you're not too tired to prioritize gardening out, I would love for you to join me on my indoor garden series. And until then, I would like to post up here a playlist of all of the other indoor garden series that I've done, because I've gardened indoors for several years now and it's been very successful. And I would love to hear if you have done any indoor gardening, and if you have, what are your favorite things to grow indoors and how do you grow them? Do you grow them in pots or do you grow them hydroponically? And hopefully this video has been helpful for you. If it has been helpful, I hope that you like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and go have a wonderful gardening day.